Okay, so the document that we're working with is Activity 711, and we're going to be looking at working with brushes. So you have a brush tool here, a paintbrush tool, sorry, not a brush tool, and you also have a brushes panel. So we're going to be working with both of those, and we're going to be, first of all, building up our own little library of brush presets, and then we'll work on editing those and creating our own brushes as well. So I'm going to select all of these brushes and delete them. And you'll see that it will not delete the basic calligraphic touch brush and the basic, this is just the basic brush. So we're going to add from the library now. So I'm going to go down to the library and I'm going to go to Artistic Calligraphic. Okay, and we're going to choose this one, 30 point flat. So it adds it to my brushes library. Then I'm going to go here to decorative scatter. And I'm going to choose this one here which says dot rings. Okay, so that's added. Then I'm going to go to artistic watercolor. And I'm going to add the one called watercolor stroke 3. So that gets added. Then I'm going to go to my bristle brush library and I'm going to choose this one here which is called mop. Okay, and then finally I'm going to go to borders decorative, and I'm going to go down to this one here which is called mosaic. So I've added those brushes to my library. So now what I want to do is apply them to each one of these pieces of artwork. It's the same word, it's the word art repeated 5 times. So I'm going to choose the top one and apply my 30 point flat brush. Second one is going to be the dot rings. Third one is going to be the watercolor. Fourth one is going to be the bristle brush mop, and the fifth one is going to be the border mosaic. Okay, so you can see just out the box you've got some really interesting brushes to choose from, but what if we wanted to customize these brushes a little bit and make them our own? So let's do that. So I'm going to double click on the 30 point flat and I'm going to change a few of the settings here. So I'm going to change the angle to 30 degrees, the roundness to 20, and the size to 19. When I press OK, it says, do you want to apply it to the strokes that you've already applied to artwork? So I'm going to say yes, apply to strokes. Then I'm going to double click on the dot rings. And this is a scatter brush. So it's got all of these properties to do with scattering objects. So we're just going to change a few of those things. I'm going to change the size, the random size from 25% to 200. So it's going to randomly resize each item from 25 to 200%. Then I'm going to change the spacing to random and set it from 20% to 80%. And I'm going to change the scatter to random and set it from 13% to 108%. And then the rotation doesn't really matter here because they're little circles, so it doesn't matter which direction they're rotated in. And then I'm going to press OK, and yes, apply to strokes. And so it's going to update, and it's going to give me that result. So let's move on to the watercolor brush. So I'm going to double click on that, and I want to change the width to 85%. Okay, and I'm also going to change it to flip along so that it flips along its own length. And I'm going to change the colorization method to tints and shades. So I can change the color of this and it's going to retain the shades, but just change the base color. So I'm going to say apply to strokes, and then I'm going to go in here and change that stroke color to more of a teal turquoise color. Okay, oh, I need to select it first. Okay, and then apply that color. There we go. All right, so then now let's move on to the bristle brush. So I'm going to double click on that, and I'm going to change the size to 192, the density to 14, the thickness to 23, the paint opacity to 75, and the stiffness to 64, and then press OK and apply to strokes. So it gives it a more kind of loose stroke feel. And then for the border brush, I'm going to change the fixed scale to 25%, and I'm going to change the spacing to 20%. So it's kind of like little tiles now, and then I'm going to say add space to fit, and then OK, and apply to strokes. So it gives me more of a kind of dotted or dashed line. So all of these numbers I'm giving you are not like magical numbers that I just know. It's because I've experimented with these brushes in advance and written down the values so that I can use them as I'm doing this. So it gives you an idea of how powerful brushes can be. And the really nice thing about this is if I select all of this now and I use my align tool to align them all to the center, I can create quite an interesting sort of graffiti style piece of artwork. And in fact, I'm going to undo that, and I want this bristle brush to be a different color. Let's make it that color. Okay, and then I'm going to align them again. Okay, so that's quite an interesting result. Very kind of free-form typography kind of style. So I'm going to revert this document, so file revert, so that we're back to the original artwork, and I'm just going to add a new artboard here so that we can play around on it to make our new brushes. So the first type of brush we're going to design from scratch is a calligraphic brush. So in the brushes panel, I'm going to go to this little button here and say new brush, calligraphic brush, and OK. And I'm just going to call it my brush 1. And you've got this little widget that you can drag around to design your brush. I'm going to give you specific values. So I'm going to set the angle to -48, and I'm going to set the roundness to 18 and the size to 52. Okay, and that's our calligraphic brush. So I'm going to press OK. So there it is there. Next brush that we're going to create is an art brush. So we need to have some artwork for that. So I'm going to make a little kind of very, very simple flame, just using some basic drawing tools here. It really doesn't have to be fantastic artwork, so don't stress about it. So I'm just going to go to my pencil tool, which is here together with the shaper tool, and I'm going to draw a flame shape. Okay, so just something like that. And I'm going to fill it with red with no stroke. Okay, and then deselect it, go back to my pencil tool, and I'm going to do a second flame, slightly smaller, and I'm going to fill that with yellow. Deselect, back to my pencil tool, and then one more, slightly smaller than that, and this will be blue. Okay, so that's my artwork that I'm going to use for my art brush. So I'm going to select it, and I'm going to go to this new brush button, and I'm going to say art brush, and say OK, and I'm going to call it my flame brush. I'm going to set the width to 20%, and I'm going to also choose for it to stroke from bottom to top. So I'm going to choose this arrow that points up, and then I'm going to say OK, I'm going to delete that artwork and let's try this brush. So I'm selecting it, going to my paintbrush tool. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, that's fine. So that's my flame brush. So the next thing I'm going to do is make a scatter brush. So I need some artwork to scatter around. So I'm going to take my type tool and I'm just going to click here, and I'm going to go to my properties panel and I'm going to type in a search for a font called Webdings. Okay, and then I'm going to go to type glyphs, and you'll see the very first glyph here is a little spider. I'm going to double click on that, and then I can close that glyphs panel, and now I have this little spider. I'm going to just make him a bit bigger, and I'm going to make that spider red, and I'm also going to right click and create outlines. So it's now just artwork that I can use. So with the spider selected, I'm going to go to new brush, scatter brush, and OK. And I'm going to call it my spider brush. And let's set some of the parameters. So we're going to go random for all of these. And then I'm going to set the from and to values for random size to 10 and 30. For random spacing, 20 and 40. Random scatter, 0 and 60. And then random rotation, 0 and 360. Okay, and then press OK. I can delete that artwork, and let's try this scatter brush with our paintbrush tool. Okay, yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, so that's our scatter brush. Now the next one that we're going to create is a border brush. So we need some artwork for that, same as before. So I'm just going to take my pencil tool. Let's do the pencil tool, and I'm just going to make a spiral like that, and then I'm going to make a sort of zigzaggy shape here. Okay, once again, it doesn't have to be serious. Okay, it's smoothing a little bit too much here, so I'm going to double click on the pencil tool and change it to accurate. Okay, so now it shouldn't smooth as much. Let's do that. Okay, and then I'm going to select this and use my width tool. Here it is here. Let's just make that like that, and then here. Actually, I'm rather going to just use a profile for it. So I'm going to select the whole lot and apply a profile and set the stroke weight up. Okay, so there's my artwork for my border brush. So what I need to do is I need to open up my swatches panel, and I need to make swatches out of these pattern swatches. So I'm going to select that artwork, drag it into my swatches panel to make a pattern with it. I'm going to delete that artwork, and then I'm going to take this, drag this into my swatches to make another pattern. So I've got these two patterns that I can now work with. So I'm going to go back to my brushes panel, and I'm going to say new brush, pattern brush. Say OK, and I'm going to call it my pattern brush. Okay, sometimes it's called a border brush, sometimes it's called a pattern brush. Okay, and now we're going to set our artwork. So for the corners, you can see this little widget here, or this little proxy shows me this is for corners. I'm going to choose that pattern. For the edges, I'm going to choose that pattern. For the inside corners, I'm going to choose that one. For the ends and for the beginnings, I'm going to choose that. So you can see it gives me an example of what this pattern is going to look like. I also just need to change the scale down a bit so it's not as big, so I'm setting it to 14. And then I'm going to say OK. So let's test this with my paintbrush tool. Okay, that's pretty cool. Okay, and you can see wherever there's a corner, it puts in the spiral, and wherever there's an end and a beginning, it puts in the spiral. Okay, so I'm going to undo that. So now we've got all the brushes that we need. I think I still have to do a bristle brush though. Okay, so let's do that. One last brush is going to be a bristle brush. And we're going to start with round fan. And then we're just going to change some things here. We'll make the size 4.3. We'll make the bristle length 177. The bristle density 72. The thickness 7. The paint opacity 29. And the stiffness 14. And OK. So now we've got all of our brushes ready to go. So now we can apply those brushes to our artwork. So over here, we're going to take the first piece of artwork and we're going to apply our 52 point My Brush 1 and we'll set that to red. In the second one, we'll use the scatter and okay, I think I'm going to go back here and change this color so that the scatter brush shows on top of it. Then we're going to go to my flame brush, okay, and I'm going to bring the size down a little bit to 0.5 point. Okay, that's nice. Then we're going to go with our bristle brush, and we'll set the color to blue. And then finally we'll use our pattern brush, and I think that's actually fine. And then I'm going to select all and align them all on top of each other. So now we have a completely custom set of brushes to create a kind of interesting graffiti street art style design. Okay, so what I want you to do in this second artboard is I want you to create 2 brushes for the game Snakes and Ladders. So if you don't know what Snakes and Ladders is, you should Google it. It's a board game, and it works with ladders taking you up towards completion and snakes taking you back, so setting you back. So let me just give you a few pointers here, and then you can work from there. So if I wanted to make a ladder, I need to make 1 rung of the ladder. So if I do that, let's just make it an orange ladder with no stroke. So if I just zoom into this, I'm going to make a copy like that and like that, and I'm going to use my Pathfinder to unite those 2 and then subtract. So that's 1 rung of the ladder. So if I take that rung and I create a pattern brush, sorry, I need to put that into my swatches as a pattern first. I can delete the original artwork. Now I can make a pattern brush, and I just choose that piece of artwork for all of these, and then I choose that brush in my paintbrush tool. I now have ladders, and if I just bring the size down to maybe 0.5 point, maybe even 1/4 point, those are pretty cool ladders. So let's choose it again, paintbrush, yeah. Okay, and for snake, what you're going to do is create, and you need to create it from left to right in order to have a decent brush. You're going to create a segment of the snake. So if I just take my knife tool here and I just go like that, and then I can, let's just swap these around, and then here let's make that like that. So that's one segment of the snake, and then you would make a tail. Okay, so I'm rushing this, but you can take your time. So let me just draw a rectangle here for the tail, and then I'm just going to take my pencil tool and reshape this. Okay, so there's my tail, and maybe with the knife tool I'm just going to do that. Okay, there's the tail, and then let's do the head. So I'll also start with a rectangle here, and then with the pencil tool I'll just reshape this into a head. Okay, and take the knife tool and let's go like that, like that, like that. Okay, so there's the three parts of my snake. I know it's not the best snake in the world, but it'll do. And then in my swatches panel, I'm going to make a pattern for the head, a pattern for a body segment, and a pattern for the tail. I can then get rid of all of that artwork, and I can go to my brushes panel, new brush, pattern brush. I'm going to make the corners this body segment, the edges a body segment, the other corners a body segment, then the end will be a tail, and the beginning will be the head. And let's just bring it down in size, and let's test it. So paintbrush, it's a bit small, let's take it up. Okay, that's pretty cool. So there's my snake brush. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and see you next time.